My hair looks just how I feel. I have been busy non-stop, so that's why my makeup looks a bit off. Hey, it's Mel, I hope you're doing well. In today's video I'm going to be reading true scary stories. I think I have about 3 or 4 here, which I'm reading off my laptop. So if you see me looking this way, it's because my laptop's right here. I'm going to read as clear and loud as I can. The first story is called True Devil. It was New Year's Day in 1995. I was in the middle of my junior year of college. A bunch of my friends had come down to visit me and my roommate for the festivities. We were all pretty hungover from drinking the night before. We went out for the usual post-greasy breakfast hangover stroll around the neighbourhood. 2 of these friends were twin brothers. One of them we hung out with all the time, the other we had just met for the first time. It was pretty normal the night before. But on this day, we were all hanging out around the local basketball court, shooting hoops with an old basketball we found in the grass. And this twin brother kept following me around all over the place with the creepiest grin I have ever seen in my life. I backed away and joined the group again. He kept following me around. When we were walking back to the apartment, it was just me and him side by side walking behind the group. He moved in front of me and kneeled down all of a sudden onto the ground, as if he was worshipping me or something. He stared at me with his creepy grin again. I didn't know what to do, so I said, "Hey buddy, you alright? We're going back now, right?" He said nothing. Later that day, my roommate said he was tripping, so I thought nothing of it and moved on with my life. A few weeks later, we got a phone call from the twin brother that we usually hung out with, and it turned out that his twin brother had gone over to his aunt's house with a knife and stabbed her 14 times. She didn't die, but that's still pretty bad. No shit! He had even called the police before going to his aunt's house because he knew he was going to do it, but he couldn't stop himself from doing it because, you know, the voices and so on. The court case was covered in the media as this was a small community where this sort of thing doesn't happen every day. I was reading one of the articles and one of the testimonies said this twin brother was severely schizophrenic and was hearing voices in his head. He believed that his aunt was the devil and that he had been commanded by God to kill her. So who's this guy that told him to go kill her? Well, as the newspaper article described, it was this guy in a group he hung out with on New Year's Day. It didn't take me long to realise that he was talking about me. This was over 20 years ago now. I know for a fact it was a mental illness, but just knowing that I somehow commanded him to go kill his aunt just stays with me to this day. Oh my god. You're telling me that this schizophrenic guy presumed that you were God, and you commanded him to go What? Story number 2 is called Amusement Park. It was the beginning of summer. I decided to go to my local amusement park. My town opens the amusement park only during summertime. I would usually spend most of my summers indoors watching YouTube videos or playing video games, basically living with my introverted tendencies. I was never the type to be outgoing, but I decided to try and make some friends at the fair this year. It was around the evening time and I took the bus alone. I finally arrived at the fair and remembered seeing how high the rides were. I'm personally afraid of heights, so I would always avoid going on the tall rides or roller coasters. As the night went on, I played a few carnival games but came out empty-handed, but there was one game that caught my attention. It was an old, dusty-looking machine isolated at the end of the park. It looked like one of those fortune-telling machines that you see in arcades. The game didn't draw much attention from the people at the fair, so I decided to check it out myself. It was called Psychic Clown. It had a creepy looking clown inside, looked a bit too real for my liking. I also noticed the game costed $1 per try, so I put whatever spare change I had into the slot. I pressed the go button and the clown began talking. It said, "Ask me a yes or no question to uncover the truth, then press the go button." So I asked the clown, "Will I get a girlfriend by the end of the year?" I hit the go button and the clown began moving and made a high-pitched creepy laugh. It eventually said the word no. I thought it's only a fair game, it can't be accurate, but the sad reality was that the clown was probably right. Aw, poor guy. I decided to ask the clown more personal questions this time. I dropped more change in the machine and asked him, "Are my parents divorced?" My parents had been divorced for 10 years now. I pressed go and the clown began its disturbing laughter and then said yes. At this point I was really creeped out and contemplated if it was just a fluke or something, or if the psychic clown game was for real. I reached for more change and realised that I only had $2 left, which was supposed to be my bus fare. I planned on calling my mum to pick me up, so I decided to use my last $2 on the psychic clown. I put my first dollar in and the game didn't work this time. I gave it a few light taps and the clown began to laugh, but this time it seemed like the clown was malfunctioning. It began laughing uncontrollably and started jerking its body back and forth vigorously, to the point where the clown started banging its head against the glass, causing it to crack. I don't have a fear of clowns, but I don't like them either. Side note. This caused me to have a fight or flight response, and people laughed at me. I assumed it was some sort of glitch, so I decided to use my last dollar. My final question to the clown was, will my mum pick me up from the fair tonight? The clown does its creepy laughter and says, no. The next part of this story is what sends chills down my spine. My mum calls me right after the clown says no. I picked up the phone and my mum asked me if I'm on my way home. I ask her if she could pick me up and she says yes, but the call then cuts off. I figured my phone had poor signal, so I didn't bother to call her back. I assumed she was on her way to pick me up. At this point I realised the clown's revolution was wrong. I headed to the exit of the fair and waited for my mum to arrive. A few minutes turned to an hour. I called my mum 10 times and it kept going straight to voicemail. I then left her a text message saying, "Where are you?" but I got no response. I then called my stepdad, who answered the phone and asked me if I'm heading home. I tell him I've been trying to get hold of my mum for the past hour. I heard sheer panic in my stepdad's voice as he tells me he will get my cousin to come pick me up instead. My cousin 1 hour later comes to pick me up. He looked distraught and I asked him if he knew where my mum was and why my stepdad didn't come along for the ride. My cousin then tells me that he had dropped my stepdad off at the hospital because my mum got into a car crash. I panicked and told my cousin to take me to the hospital. Upon arrival at the hospital, the doctors told us that my mum was pronounced dead from her injuries. It's been a year since my mum's passing and I always contemplate whether it was my fault that I texted her when she was driving or if the psychic clown had something to do with it, but I will never know for sure. That clown, I swear, is cursed. It's a fact. Clowns never bring anything good, okay? It's always something negative. So many people have a fear of clowns. The third story is called Someone in My Apartment. It was Friday or Saturday night and I was pre-gaming with some friends at my apartment before going out into a bar in town. One of my friends called an Uber and once we were all at the bar, we got pretty drunk. At some point in the night, I asked for a girl's number who I had been talking to, but when I went into my pocket to grab my phone, I realised I didn't have it on me. I checked all my pockets and tried retracing my steps at the bar, and even asked all the bartenders if someone turned in a phone. I didn't remember using my phone the whole time I had been out though. I stepped out of the bar with one of my friends and used his phone to call mine. The phone rang and then someone picked up on the other end, but they didn't say anything. I said, "Hi, where did you find this phone?" I then heard breathing on the other end. I asked them if they were at the bar, but they hung up on me. I looked at my friend and tried calling again. It went straight to voicemail this. I tried using Find My iPhone, but apparently I had that feature switched off for some reason. There was no way I could have fun knowing my phone was stolen. My friend told me to worry about it tomorrow and get the police to track it. I went home early that night, put a couple of slices of bread in the toaster, and turned around to find my phone on the kitchen counter. Was someone in his house? I checked my recent calls and someone had accepted the call and it lasted for 25 seconds. Someone had been in my apartment to accept that call, that was clear. I flipped the place upside down, looking, screaming for whoever it was to come out from wherever they were hiding. I finally called the police, but considering there was no real proof of forced entry and places to hide in my apartment are basically non-existent, they couldn't do anything but a police report. Nothing seemed to be missing from my apartment, but going to sleep that night knowing someone had been in my apartment was the most uncomfortable night of my life. Well, yeah, obviously, because someone was in your apartment, mate. I wouldn't sleep there. Knowing that someone had just been in my apartment, I'd be gone. I'd be sleeping at a friend's house. Forget that. The fourth and last story is called A Visit from the Previous Tenant. Back in 2014, I had a friendly ghost encounter at my old apartment in Gramercy, New York. The apartment was located in one of New York's oldest neighborhoods. My apartment was built in the late 1800s. It was late fall and I arrived home early from work on a slow day. After a 45-minute nap, it was around 4:30 p.m. I had woken up because I felt the presence of a woman standing to the right of my bed, situated in the far right corner of my studio. I'm certain I wasn't dreaming. This woman seemed kind, and she kneeled down to whisper in my ear. I burned. I died in the fire here in the corner. We all know how I feel about ghosts, so no thanks. Then, the image of a woman in a burning kitchen flashed across my mind. As I woke up, her foggy silhouette was gone before I realised what had just happened. I then opened all the windows in my apartment and went back to bed. How can you go back to bed after that? I don't think she was trying to hurt me. She just wanted to be remembered. Whisper in someone else's ear then, because I don't like that. I don't like that at all. But anyway, those were 4 true scary stories. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was a bit random, but I really wanted to try this out, and give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Again, thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye.